right, you miserable accursed. I can't believe you've stuck with us all this way, but we're rightly in the stretch run here. It's the day before Election Day. We're back. Scott Reid, Jordan Leichnitz, special Ontario election guest, Deb Hutton. And boy, she's been a star on this show. I don't want to say it. She's great. Anyway, let's get going. We're going to talk today about our daily polling results, as we always do, including, just for fun, seat projections. And if campaigns matter, did this one, and we'll take a look at the English Liberal debate last night, and of course throw in our do-overs and curses and blessings. So let's start with today's Relay Strategies polling. It's brought to you by Enbridge Gas, reliable, affordable natural gas to heat your homes and power our economy. So, you know what we have today? Holy fuck, you'd have never imagined. Deb, guess what the numbers are today?
I'm going to say 48, 28, 18.
Christ, you were expecting more change than you got. 48 Ford PC, 28 Crombie Liberal, 16 Stiles NDP, and 8 Schreiner Green. So that is what it is. However, just to spice up our conversation, Ms. Ronellenfitch did a couple of things. First of all, she produced 3 different turnout models, and she gave them to Philippe Fournier, the quite astute polling aggregator and commentator, and he generated seat projections for us. So what do we learn from that exercise? Well, we learn the 3 models are this: 48, 28, 16, 8, just as we have it.
Right.
Second one is that data weighted to the 2022 gender and age turnout. Okay? And that yields 47, 29, 16, 8. So not much difference. And then voters who tell us that they are extremely motivated to vote. And that is 49% of the population. And that reveals...
And yet only 25% of this podcast.
It's funny. And that's 49% of the population, and it yields quite a different result. It yields 43, 31, 19, 8. And when you look at what that means in terms of seat count, the current numbers, as we're reporting them this morning, 104 PCs.
Wow. 104? Just scenario 3.
No, this is the as is 48, 28, 16, okay. 8. Yields 104 PCs, 12 Liberals, 6 New Democrats, and 2 Greens.
I think 104 is cruising percentage terms wise, in terms of percentage of the seats in the legislature. That's probably larger than Peterson's victory. It's like Peterson and Frost. Like that may be a historic achievement.
Weighted to 2022, 99 PCs, 18 Liberals, 5 New Democrats, 2 Greens.
Pesky Greens.
Extremely motivated to vote. 78 PCs, 22 Liberals, 22 New Democrats.
Whoa.
And 2 Greens.
And a partridge in a pear tree.
And I'll tell you one more interesting thing. We've seen so little movement in this campaign that it's been frustrating to us. But when you look at this 49% of people that say they're extremely motivated to vote, and by the way, I just want to encourage all of our listeners, I have, in my long, endless life, not really seen a good turnout model. And I would take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt. Okay, we're just playing with numbers here. With 49% of people who are extremely motivated to vote, that doesn't mean they're going to vote, and that doesn't mean other people aren't going to vote. But this group of people started the campaign 51% Ford PC, 23% Crombie Liberal, and 18% Styles NDP. And as of yesterday, we're 43 PC, down 8 points, 31 Liberal, up 8 points, 19 NDP, up 1 point. So the Liberal campaign may have been more effective among people that were really paying attention than we've been giving it credit for. Anyway, Deb, do you want to chew on those numbers for a bit?
Yeah, so I still believe, Jordan, here's my sop to you. I still believe that GOTV for the New Dems and for the Conservatives will outstrip anything the Liberals can do. And I think that is simply because I've used Scott's line a couple of times in the last few days, but when your party's decimated, it's hard to pull together an experienced and a team that knows what to do. And I think we've seen that in Bonnie's tour, and I think we will see that tomorrow. So I am still of the view that the New Dems will do better than the numbers tell us. And I don't know, do we care if there's 78 or 104? Maybe for Conservatives. I think a lower number is actually easier for the Premier.
Yeah. Interesting. With that size of a majority, it brings its own problems. You can win too big. And maybe that's a risk here. Yeah, I mean, I unsurprisingly, I would agree with Deb. I think the challenge with some of those turnout models is that they don't sort of bake in the differences in GOTV between the parties, and it's hard to accurately represent regional vote efficiency. So I think it could underrepresent the NDP numbers in some sense there. I mean, personally, my bet is that we'll see the PCs finish closer to 90. Like, I think because if you do see if you do see a higher NDP number of seats, those are going to come predominantly from the PCs. So I think you could see them closer to 90, but I think you'll see the Liberals and the NDP pretty close in terms of seat count, although I will wager my money is on the NDP holding official opposition, even if it's just by a little bit. But yeah, I mean, this is the election that could have been an email.
Well, I hear what you're saying about having too large and unwieldy a caucus. But I think if you're running for the third time, to dunk the ball into triple digits would be quite an accomplishment. I think you would see that as punching your ticket into the history books, and I think that's probably something they would really like. I know Kory, we've all heard him talk personally and publicly, had thirsted for a while for that 50% popular vote number. It doesn't look like that's attainable, but if you could get into triple digits, I mean, frankly, like any of these numbers, 78 means what did they win the last election? 74, so or 76, like you still are increasing in your third kick at the can. That's an astonishing thing. We'll see on the seat counts. I don't dismiss Jordan's point of view as desperate, only one day to go, NDP spin because she's got nothing else to say. I don't dismiss it as that. I know
your concern is noted, Scott. Thank you.
I know liberals who have the same fear, who do look at these numbers and go, as improbable as it sounds, if there's a 10, 12 point spread, you still worry that the concentration of NDP support below Bloor Street means that there's going to be a competition. There's what you have to be worried about if you're the Liberals is that 27% ends up being where you end up. It fades a bit from these numbers, and you come second everywhere. So I don't think it's a done deal that the Liberals will get official opposition, but you got to be feeling pretty good about your chances looking at this number set, and it does mean that you've just got to concentrate the next 48 hours like a laser on where you can marshal resources and overcome the deficiencies that Deb's talking about. And I wouldn't worry about making the tour look a damn bit good in the next 2 days. I'd rip everybody
don't worry,
off
they're
the
not.
tour.
Yeah.
Everyone except the driver, it comes off a tour and gets into a riding to pull vote. And I would target those 20 ridings that they think they have a shot at. So,
and just, my friend, it's 24 hours when voting starts, not 48.
I suppose that's true. So anyway, my point is, have a drink. It's over.
Sorry, you're not Mart, you're Jordan. I have Mart Styles on the brain. Jordan, Mart and Bonnie should be talking to women today. They're still
Totally.
Oh, really?
women are, I mean, men are so settled. The male numbers for Ford are fucking hysterical. Scott, like in our in our age group, and I love the fact that Kyla thinks we're roughly the same age. In our age group, it's 60 to 20, right? Uh,
Yeah.
so Ford has 60% of the vote of people 50 to 65 men 50 to 65 years old. It's just insane. But women are
Listen,
considerably
if I go
less.
into the Legion, I wear my get her done hat. Like I'm not calling it out. The truth.
But women are far less convinced, far less impressed, and he's still getting more votes from women than
I
all
think
the underlying
some of
data
those can
suggests he
be
should.
peeled away for sure. And I was interested, like, so Mara was out yesterday with her closing message, and it was pretty heavily affordability focused, which I think is the right thing
Yeah.
to do because, of course, we've seen that issue continue to really have a hold over female voters. So I think that there's still fishing to be done there, and they're doing it. The question is anybody hearing?
Well, so let's move to that really quickly and just have a quick round on this. One of our listeners, JDM Stewart, a person of accomplishment in his own right, asked the question, everybody always says campaigns matter. If campaigns matter, why has nothing moved in this election campaign? So did this campaign matter? Jordan, what do you think? I mean, it mattered to you.
Yeah.
You were in Morocco.
Yeah,
But
that was great. It was so good. I took a little pause. Yeah, look, I mean, I think campaigns continue to matter. They continue to create more opportunity for significant shifts in voter intention than periods between campaigns, if that makes any sense. But this was an atypical campaign in a lot of ways. And the introduction of the Trump and tariffs as sort of the defining issue of the campaign and the success that Ford had with really cementing and setting that as a ballot question with a large portion of the electorate made it an unusual campaign. And I talked a little bit about this yesterday, but I think this is an important dynamic for both the NDP and the Liberals. Normally, you would count on a campaign to be that period for parties who do not have massive war chests, who are not, dramatically in the lead, where you equalize in terms of resources, you equalize in terms of public attention, where voters tune into you and they evaluate a little bit more what type of leadership is on offer for reasons that had to do with external factors, Trump and the media cycle associated with that. That just did not happen this campaign. Like, people did not tune in the same way that we've seen in other campaigns. So, I mean, I think campaigns continue to matter, but this one was an unusual one in a lot of ways. And maybe I think also there's a lot of lessons to be taken from that circumstance in terms of what's going to unfold in the federal election.
you know, Scott, I just picking up on something Jordan was, I think, alluding to in there is campaigns matter, but money matters more. And in this era where the earned media isn't worth a shit in terms of persuading or moving anything, and people like Brian Topp tell me that, the only thing people are going to hear from your campaign is what you pay for them to hear. And so, yeah, things are relatively even in an election campaign, but they're not even. I bet the Conservatives are 2-1 outspending the Liberals and the NDP in this election campaign. The Liberals don't have the money to compete, and I'll take my share of the responsibility for that still. But this is, I think, becoming a defining factor in politics with the demise of earned media.
Yeah, I agree with that. That would be my second reason that this campaign matters. I think there's three reasons this campaign mattered. I think despite what seems at the top level numbers, a relative status quo and relative stability throughout the RIP period, I think first, it matters a hell of a lot to the NDP and the Liberals, because if there's going to be some reshuffling of that deck, it has majorly consequences for those parties and for their continued existence. So, for example, if it literally finished this campaign with the Liberals still in third place, still outside of official party status, well, that might be the sunsetting on that party. Like it's not. By no means could you walk away from such a result and say, well, the Liberal Party in Ontario will continue to exist. And so we'll see what the results are, but it matters to both those parties what happens. Second, I think it's your point, which confirms a bunch of things we've been wondering about modern campaigning. And it is that, you can you can just rely on pre-writ advertising and even the regulated degree of in-writ advertising, relying on whatever financial resources you have, building up your brand, and then sustaining it through 28 days of a campaign, especially if there's other things distracting people. And the earned media's ability to turn around attitudes and affect common perceptions, it's not a given at minimum. I don't know that it's gone. I don't know that it's vanished, but it certainly is no longer something that a campaign architect would fear from the outset. You would think that you have at least the tools to off-put that to balance out that. And then I think the third thing, oddly enough, I think you can make an argument that maybe this campaign is benefiting Carney because Ford's strategy to run on tariffs and Trump has had the effect of, along with Trump himself and the inescapable reality of the goddamn bastard, it has sustained this constant conversation for the past month in the largest province and the media center of the country around tariff, around Trump's, around the fact that around Trump, this is our number one issue. And I do think that when you look at, there's an Ipsos poll yesterday that says that Carney's actually brought the party into first place. And we'll see if others echo that. But if
the party's in first place, see, Ipsos doesn't ask party leader. They just they only ask party label. So that was with no name attached to it.
So you can only imagine if you ask the question the way that you would typically would. We'll see if that gets validated as a result, but the trend seems indisputable, and there is no other explanation. And some polling suggests that to validate the idea that if any of this is happening, it's because people think they're suddenly hiring a prime minister to manage this specific problem at this specific moment. And I think 28 days of this campaign has saturated even more than it otherwise would have this problem and this moment. And I think that's having a knock-on positive effect for Carney because it's obviously just playing to his issue set and his strength. So I think this campaign has mattered, but maybe not in ways that look obvious, and certainly not in terms of whether or not the incumbent government was ever in jeopardy.
That's such a surprisingly thoughtful answer for this early in the morning. Deb,
yeah, and it was a lot.
What are your thoughts on this?
I think campaigns matter 100%. I really do. Incumbency matters. There's no doubt about it. But when you think about the fact that the premier did not really have a glove laid on him in 28 days, that tells me that brilliant campaign strategy, the timing, the use of advertising, both before and during, the entire tour. And, I've been critical of lack of media exposure and lack of debates and a few things that are more traditional. But the truth is their strategy was brilliant and it worked. I say our. And so I like,
now that he's winning with 100 seats, it's our strategy, huh? I'm sorry, absolutely. I want to get in there and grab a piece of cake for myself.
No, but I mean, you can't argue with that. I mean, think about the fact that 28 days, you're the incumbent, not once, but twice. There was hope that the early campaign call was going to hurt him a la David Peterson. None of that materialized.
Yeah.
And, you can say, yes, money matters, but there's a lot of hard work that goes into getting money. And yes, it's easier when you're the incumbent, but these guys were no slouches on the fundraising side. So, we're sort of dismissing things in the conversation because they were in control. Well, there's a reason they're in control, and there's a reason they control timing, and there's a reason they have money in the war chest and all of those things. So absolutely all of that matters. And the other two, quite frankly, didn't punch through. And we've discussed many days, because we didn't have a lot else to talk about, why that didn't happen. But the truth is, it did not happen.
I'll just throw one quick thing. I saw Nick Nanos on TV yesterday, and he made a point that I hadn't thought of, but I think it's valid and it's worth repeating. This whole 28-day campaign, none of the leaders, none of the campaigns had a gaffe. Like none of the campaigns lost their day to a fuck up, which is very unusual, right? But also maybe kind of reflects a little bit of the, the sort of the large comforter of pay no attention that's been spread over this election and is maybe spread over contemporary earned media. But I thought that was an interesting point. Like no one had to spend their day on defense explaining away something. Maybe a little bit of the one candidate in Oshawa, possibly, but by and large, there were no big fuck ups. That's odd.
Yes, that requires attention.
Yeah. I mean, I think there were a couple things that could have been a fuck up. Certainly Ford's comments about people going to ER. Could have been a fuck up.
Yes.
Right. But didn't happen.
Greetings, Canadian Political Pod listener. I'm your narrator, Gary, an artificial intelligence-generated voice. Exciting and serious sounding is what we typed in the AI voiceover input field. And boom, Gary exists. Hey, do you know what's not artificial? Not even one bit? The highly influential audiences air quotes media podcasts offer to its advertisers. And I say that with all the sincerity a machine learning, data-optimized, predictive network of interconnected neural nodes can muster. Whether your ad message is on Curse of Politics, the Hurly-Burly, Hotel Pacifico, or the brand new Race to Replace, you will be reaching cabinet ministers, members of parliament, the political class, the C-suite, and corporate Canada, leading journalists, and tens of thousands of engaged Canadians. People saying this is a unique political moment is underselling it. Policy is under scrutiny. A party leader is being voted on. The Ontario election is underway. There will be a new prime minister. And then there's the guy living in the White House who calls us the 51st state. Does anyone remember another time like this? I'm instantly scouring millions of data points to answer my own rhetorical question. No, you do not. This is when you need to get your message to the decision makers. Email us at contact@airquotesmedia.com. You'll be dealing with Jill and Todd, who are real, not artificial at all people, and generally very friendly. Well, Jill is anyway. We're still deciding about Todd.
All right, let's go to our do-overs. Put your hand up if you want to go first. All right, Scott Reid.
Okay.
From the front of the class, waving his hand.
Excuse me, Mrs. Ring. I have a poem that I've written that I would like to read to the class. That was Scott Reid in grade 3. My poem is entitled Vampires in Love by Scott Reid. And I would like to read it to you now. No, my do-over is I don't even have a do-over. My do-over is all the people that were watching the Carney endorsement from Bonnie Crombie and saying, that's so pathetic. Come on. She endorses Carney as a way of getting Carney into the news frame. And then Carney sends back a post that says, so nice to see you.
Thank you for your message. I have received it.
Best wishes. Please leave a message after the tone. Like it was, but you know what? I think it was still worth doing. And there's a little of that, a little bit of a face wash with the hockey glove. But on the other hand, it got news, and it's like a couple times in this campaign, Bonnie has done things that I might not have recommended or that I may even kind of went, ugh. But it got news and it jammed her name into a sentence on the day of the federal debate with the guy who's the most popular liberal in the country. And what the fuck, who cares? I think it works. So I would call it a do-over.
She's spent 2 years getting compared to Trudeau. So one day of headlines that has her name in the same sentence as Carney is better than that. But
exactly.
Yeah. All right, Deb, do-over.
My do-over was going to be the last tour event that the premier has in this campaign, where he is going into Bonnie Crombie's riding that she's hoping to win tomorrow, and he is meeting with the Polish community, which Bonnie prides herself as being part of. And that was going to be my do-over. I thought it was just too much of a sharp, pointy stick, and then I thought, you know what? I love it. It's brilliant. It is edgy, and it says I am winning this friggin' thing, so onward.
Head
Relentless.
fuckery.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Kory.
Jordan, do-over?
Well, I will actually abide by the rules of the segment. And I can't claim credit for the idea for this do-over because Bonnie Crombie and a friend, an Oppo friend of mine, sort of sparked this discussion yesterday because Crombie was out complaining about the early election call for the reason that she's had so many poorly vetted candidates. And the observation that my friend had, which I think is quite an astute one, is that for the Liberals, their organizational and fundraising woes were going to be most likely to show up earliest in poor candidate vetting. That's one of your really most likely places that you're going to surface low resources in a snap campaign, is that you're not going to have time or resources to adequately vet people. And so my redo would be for the Ontario NDP, who has actually a really excellent war room. And I think they were operating very well pre-writ as well. They were driving a lot of the stories on Greenbelt and things like that. So they have the muscle. My redo would be that they should have taken some of the candidate oppo against the Liberals and fired it out very early, take heads early, as a way to discredit the Libs in the Progressive primary. I think that is, it's not the whole ball game, but that's something that in the first week or two, a pound on that could have been pretty helpful for them. So that was my redo.
That's a good one, Jordan. It's a good one.
Goodness. My do-over goes to Chrystia Freeland, who really needs a time machine. Like, she really needs to wind the clock back at least 12 hours and do that debate again, because I think that really hurt her. Like, I think that her retrenchment into
she ran as Trudeau.
Campbell Clark, by the way, nails this in his column today, and I just think that, to be honest, I think she must be in real danger of getting passed by Gould at this point. So I think that if we discuss the debate as the last chance for her to change the trajectory of the campaign, she may well have done it, but not in the way she intended.
Yeah, Gould ran circles around everybody on that stage in terms of communications acumen.
So let's flow right into the debate. Jordan, what do you think?
Yeah, I thought number one, wow, so boring. But number two was I thought Gould was really the only one who punched through. She had the sharpest elbows. And unlike the other folks on the stage, who, and, to be clear, like, it was a good competent mix. You can see why Ruby Dalla was not invited. It overall projected all sorts of stability and competence. But Gould was the one who remembered that politics is about people, not Ottawa gobbledygook policy. And I think she did a really excellent job. And I think that she absolutely, in her communication style, outshone both Carney and Freeland. I was really surprised that Freeland, she sort of faded into the background, I thought, during the debate, and her choice, which was clearly an intentional one, to really talk about her record, talk about Trudeau favorably, was absolutely confusing to me. I think from a strategic perspective, it made no sense. It made her look defensive and out of touch, I think, with some of the problems that have led everybody to be on that stage. I thought Carney came off as sounding smart, pleasant, and extremely inside the bubble. So I don't know that there was anything really in there for him that was exciting or a knockout punch or anything like that. I think the person who benefited most from that debate was Gould by a long shot, and I think she's going to come second.
Scott, Ms. Freeland, what differentiates you from Prime Minister Trudeau? I'd rather answer a different question.
And that question is, how proud are you of the record of the Trudeau government? And let me take 5 minutes to talk about it. Yeah, I was watching it live, and I was quite taken by that exchange. I actually thought she looked livelier than Monday night, but her message track was consistently to embrace the Trudeau government and the record there. And she's another point she I haven't read Campbell's column, so I don't know if he makes this point. Apologies if he did, but another point, she actually interrupted the question to say, let's just take 5 minutes and do a round of huzzas for Justin Trudeau. And okay, fair enough. I mean, they're all part of the same team, but not what you want to do at that moment in that debate when you're behind. I have a completely different take than Jordan. I grant that Karina looked good. Again, she's used this race, I think, very well. And she's an attractive, capable communicator. Like, you saw that coming through. But I thought, especially the way the debate was structured with the talk of Trump, tariffs, economic issues off the top, in contrast to Friday night where he was, or Monday night where Carney was so limited, I thought that he just dominated the discussion and really just almost reached past the other candidates on the stage and just said, look, if the issue out there is who are we going to hire to take on Trump, I'm the guy. I thought he showed more energy than he has shown in a lot of events before. And I just thought he absolutely dominated. He had a little more political edge to him. He connected his resume in dealing with previous international financial crises as to why that equips him to manage this financial crisis, which I think has got to be the logic that's going through that mind of people that are migrating away from others toward Carney now. So I actually thought that if he could have done that in French, I'd be like, look out. But I thought he absolutely dominated the debate, and like you guys, I thought Karina did well. But and Freeland was an effective apostle of the status quo, which might not be the assignment right now.
I think this race started as a race for first and is between Freeland and Carney, and has turned into a race for second between Freeland and Gould.
It feels a little like the provincial campaign we've been going through, right? Like seriously, it
Right.
does.
Which is kind of the point I was making earlier. Trump and tariffs has actually dominated. So like that's the only criterion by which people are making a hire.
Yeah, I would just say to Scott's point, like it's hard not to bring more energy if you're Carney because we've seen none of it. So maybe
I
We'll give
remember
you that
when
one.
Scott was like wanting Carney to bowl him over,
Yes.
Like but you were bowled over, really?
No, I
Genuine
wasn't bowled
question.
over, but
Okay.
he showed a little more zip. There was a little wind in his sails.
But
I
how
thought.
could you not, is my point. Like, honest to God. He did himself no damage. He looked competent enough. My takeaway, too, is that, and I don't know how many, because God knows I don't know the Liberal Party, but I don't know how many people are still real progressives in the voting base you've got for March 9th. But if there are a considerable number, Karina for sure marked that territory. Without sounding too much of an apologist for the Trudeau government. Like I thought her line about, which is good for conservatives as well, her line that, we shouldn't change our policies because Pierre Poilievre tells us to do so, was a brilliant line if you are looking as a Liberal for a progressive, but not Justin Trudeau. So I actually thought she did amazingly well, but I was reminded sort of the provincial campaign right now. My only other point is I actually think, and I feel sad saying this because I know her a little bit, but Chrystia Freeland honestly believes in her gut that because she did Trump 1, she can do Trump 2. And it's just a little bit sad.
Right. Okay, let's wrap this thing up with our blessings or curses. Jordan, lead us off.
Well, as we are the last day before E-Day, my blessing goes out to all the candidates, but mostly their families who have been through this slog of a campaign. You guys are almost there. I think we all know people who are running, and we all know, from our own experience, what that kind of involvement sort of costs in terms of your personal life and your families. And I don't think it often gets acknowledged. So I just wanted to send a shout out and a blessing to those folks who are supporting their people who are running. And it is almost over, friends. And thank you, because without people willing to put their names forward with the support of their families, our democracy would be in a pretty sorry state.
Great. Scott?
My curse goes out to Carney and the campaign, and I know I just said positive things about his debate performance, and I feel them strongly, but there's tweaks, and so it's a gentle curse, but there are important, noticeable tweaks that need to be made. It is a constant use of the term catalyzing, supercharging, economic basket. These, and I know he was in this mode, non-candidate mode, until about 15 minutes ago, but those things have to be beat out of the horse. Okay. Like, it's such management consultant horseshit lingo. We're going to catalyze and supercharge and butterfuck and all these phrases. Like, just stop it. Okay. Talk straight. Okay.
You don't think the people are storming the barricades to catalyze Canada's productivity?
It's like, we're going to catalyze our economic potential and our productivity opportunity. Okay. I got it. But let's get a little more street level. So there's just, I think all of this is working for him in terms of who he is and how he's positioned and meeting the moment. Is very fortunate in many respects, but just dial it a little bit. And as a related thought, I was struck by how his campaign, I was doing the CTV broadcast last night. They're talking to guys like Mike LeCouture and talking to other reporters, and their pre-debate spin was, listen, we acknowledge that this Hamas gaffe occurred. We dealt with it up front. We're not pretending it didn't happen. And we had a post-mortem on it. That I heard that phrase about 5 times from different reporters. They're telling people they had a post-mortem. I don't know why you would hang a lantern on that thing. It was a verbal slip of the tongue. I wouldn't have given it that much credit. I certainly wouldn't have said we did a post-mortem on it as though you gathered people around an operating table and dissected this like slip of the tongue, which, by the way,
don't make a mistake in French prepositions again, okay? That's
yeah,
the post-mortem.
like just move on. So I thought that smacked to me of a campaign over managing something and losing sight of the bigger picture. So little tweaks there. Better to learn them now than in the middle of a general election when Jenny and Pierre Poilievre are coming at you with a chainsaw.
All right. Deb, blessing or curse?
I got a curse for everybody who is thinking about not voting or going in the voting booth and declining their ballot or refusing to do it, whatever you need to do these days. I think that is atrocious. Get out and vote.
All right. I have a blessing. My blessing goes out to Newfoundland Premier Andrew Furey, who in a surprise move yesterday announced his resignation. I was very sad to hear it. I really hope it isn't the end of his political career. I can't tell you how much I admire this guy. He's so smart. He's so thoughtful. He's very progressive. He's done a lot of really interesting social policy initiatives there. I know from personal experience, he's very interested in addressing food security and made real steps there. Plus, he did the historic deal with Quebec on Churchill Falls, which dramatically immediately improves Newfoundland's financial picture. I just think he's a great guy. And he said he didn't have the stomach to do Trump for 4 years. And boy, I can get that. But we're going to miss him in Canadian politics. And I hope he comes back. But certainly, thank you for your service, Andrew Furey. You've been a great premier. With that, I would like to thank all of you accursed who watched or listened to this show. We don't have any sponsors today because it's not legal to have them today, or not legal to be a sponsor today. So we have no sponsors to thank today, so we only have to thank you and Jordan and Deb and Scott. And we will see you tomorrow for one last round of speculation before Friday when we get to talk about what actually happened. So we'll see you tomorrow on E-Day. In the meantime, take care of yourselves today. And if you're in the campaign, bust your ass.